you can't love our food and hate our people. Like that isn't, that doesn't make any sense. So it's our gateway into someone else's cultures when you try their food. And then it opens the door to learning about more about this person and where they come from. The government is supposed to include all people. Everybody that lives in this country is supposed to benefit, and the government is supposed to serve them. Then you have to make sure that the government is as diverse as the people that it serves, no more, no less. And in order to make sure that government serves everybody, it's important to have that diversity, the diversity of the population.
Why, hello there, food lovers, and welcome to The Hungry Immigrant. I'm your host, Abang Brian, a chef, food researcher, reality TV star, and a guy who believes that every dish tells a story. This is where we uncover the stories behind the flavors, the people shaping our culinary world, and the dishes that bring us all together. From hidden street stalls to Michelin-starred kitchens, we dive into taste, traditions, and untold stories of food across borders. So grab a seat, bring your appetite, and let's feast on culture, one bite at a time. She's an immigration lawyer by day, a non-profit warrior by night, and somewhere in between, Pamela Yee's running a rebellion, armed with bold food, brave chefs, and the unapologetic truth. This isn't your typical Heritage Month soundbite. From feeding communities after wildfires to fighting hate with Michelin star power, Pam's flipping the script on what activism looks and tastes like. If you ever said, "I love Asian food," this episode dares you to prove you love Asian people too. So let's talk justice, identity, and maybe pan-fried noodles. Let's dig in. This is another episode of The Hungry Immigrant with me, Abang Brian, and I'm sitting down with someone who is a badass. The one thing that stuck out for me was like, oh my God, this person belongs in this show because she's an immigration lawyer, and it's called The Hungry Immigrant. So welcome, Pamela Yee.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And by the way, this is the first time I'm hearing her voice. She's got this like, she almost can do like a radio show, like a night radio show, like with DJ Love.
DJ Love.
DJ Yee Love. So she is the executive director of Stopping AAPI Hate. For the global audience, tell us, who is Pam Yee?
I am a Chinese American, Washingtonian, which is very rare in this town, fourth generation Washingtonian. My dad's family came here in the early 1900s. My great-grandfather had a really well-known nightclub here in DC called Casino Royale. We had restaurants and grocery stores and all number of things here in Washington, D.C. But my mother, she came from Hong Kong, immigrated to the States in the 1970s. So I grew up in D.C., Cantonese, Toisang speaking, and really just started off working in the restaurant industry when I was in college, in a nightclub, as a waitress, at a billiards hall, all like the traditional kind of immigrant story. But went to law school and got into immigration law. And that's what I do right now. I am an immigration attorney. I assist people pro bono who are going through the immigration process, whether it's defensive or affirmative, representing children, asylum seekers, victims of torture, persecution, trafficking, all the really interesting stuff. Yeah. And then on the side, we started Chef Stopping AAPI Hate with Chef Kevin Tien and Chef Tim Ma.
Of which we got to give a big shout out. If you're just listening to this, please stop your car or whatever you're doing. Look at the video because we are in Lucky Danger, which is opening soon. This is
opening very soon, yes.
Right smack in Washington, D.C. And we are in the Mahjong room. So like this place is offered to us by Chef Tim Ma. So thank you very much, Chef Tim. And we wish you all the best for the opening. But already from the front to the back, I feel like there's going to be like some Cheng Li Ching playing in the background, like that kind of atmosphere. But so please stop and have a look at where we are. And also check out the fabulous Pam Yee, of course. Uh,
I mean, I'll be here a lot, probably in this back room. This back room, which is the mahjong room, is supposed to have mahjong and uh, high-end bourbon and whiskey, which is my drink of choice. Like any true attorney.
so how did you meet Tim and Kevin?
DC is a small town. I've been here my whole life. I've worked in the industry. Through friends, met Tim. I think the more significant place I met Tim was actually we were out on Pride, and I had also like for Capitol Pride in here in DC. I was an executive producer for the Capitol Pride Parade. Wow. And it's one of my favorite holidays. It's coming up. We have World Pride coming up in DC in June. I had a friend who was coming to one of our post Pride events, our parties, and they asked if they could bring a friend. They said, and I said, who? He's like, well, his name is Tim. He's a chef. I was like, is he gay? He's like, no, he's straight. You know, he's been going through like some tough times. He like, you know, just want to bring, so you want to bring a straight, sad chef to my pride party? And I was like, okay, that's fine. So he came, we met, you know, it was great. And, you know, really in starting, on a more serious note, like with chefs, it was after the pandemic. Right. There was a lot of just a really anti-Asian sentiment going on years before then. It was when there was a lot of the Asian elder being hit. Yeah. It was, you know, it was awful. And, you know, and Tim and I have talked about how most of it was caught on like CCTV, right? So the picture quality's, you know, terrible, but the result of that is that you can really, when you're looking at the videos, it looks like your aunt, it looks like your mom, it looks like your dad getting attacked. And in the wake of all that, in the restaurants mostly being shuttered, thinking about what can you do? Like, we got to do something. You know, really, it was Tim, Kevin, one of our other board members, and a lot of the restaurant community here in DC. It was supposed to be just a takeout series, just one. Right. And then they kind of built up and more chefs reached out. These are some of these really well-known, award-winning, you know, Michelin star, James Beard award-winning chefs who weren't really participating in a ton of other events or doing any kind of other fundraising, who just, they're so busy and they're so celebrated. They're really hard to get a hold of to get them to participate. They were reaching out to Kevin and Tim, saying like, hey, we want to do the next one. And then it spread to different cities. You know, I was an immigration attorney. I still am. And Tim reached out to me and he's like, I think we want to turn this into like a regular thing. I think we want to make this a nonprofit. And from that point on, I was planning on going back. I was on sabbatical. I was on maternity leave at the time and ready to go back to work. And I said, you know what? I'll set you up. Let me get us organized and we'll go from there. I'll get you an executive director and I'll, in the meantime, stay on board until I go back to work. You know, the next thing I know, I'm signed up to be the executive director. And now I'm at two nonprofits. You know, saying my mom is like, so you're like an attorney, right? You're a lawyer, which is great. But they're like, you work for like two no profits, right? Like, and I was like, no money? No, zero profit, like no profit. But then not just one, but two. And then my mom is like, well, one will have a profit. I'm like, no, mom, like none, zero profit. No one will ever have profit. Yeah. That's kind of what I signed up for.
So for people who don't know what Chef Stopping AAPI Hate is, first of all, let's backtrack even further. AAPI, for people who are tuning in from around the world, if you don't know what AAPI is Asian American Pacific Islander. It refers to the group of minorities that's placed together, and now we've included Native Hawaiian as well, right? So it's technically
AA and HPI.
Yeah, so all of us, including The Rock. So yeah, that's how I kind of summarize it. Moana, come on in.
You're Jason Momoa.
Yeah, come on in. Realistically, practically, what CSAH or Chef Stopping AAPI Hate is, it's the chefs coming together
Chefs coming together. I mean, I kind of always describe it as we are like the FEMA of like fundraising dinner events.
Okay, so it's a dinner.
Yeah. So we fundraise, we have some programming, but generally we fundraise for in support of other organizations and their programming, like setting up like Stop API Hate. There's like many of them, and not just in the AA NHPI space. When there was the wildfires, the LA fires, the Maui wildfires, there was the earthquake in Turkey, and the Turkish embassy that was right here. They had tons of volunteers that were taking jackets and blankets and everything. So with Kevin Tien putting together lunches for the volunteers and then dropping them off. Really Monterey Park, when there was that shooting there over the Lunar New Year, really any disaster, and separately from that, we will try to get together a group of chefs with very little time, sometimes 3 weeks at the most, putting together about 10 chefs, sometimes across the country. We did a dinner fundraiser for Ukraine. We did it here, and with one of our partners, Andrew Horry, who at the time was at Single Thread Farms out in San Francisco, put together another dinner out in San Francisco. It was about like a week or two later. So fundraise, raise a lot of money, donate it to those organizations that are on the ground or directly to the families, to the organizations, to the communities, if we can. What is so beautiful about chefs is that a lot of times when you read about these disasters, you read about these people that are suffering, something happening, and you feel so incredibly like helpless. It's like you see all this and now it's on our social media feeds, and then it becomes your algorithm, and then it's like all you're seeing. Like what can you do? What can you do from home, like sitting here in Washington D.C. when there's a war, across the country, or like there's a war in across the world, and there's disasters across the country. So what we do is we get together a bunch of chefs who also, I mean, our chef partners are absolutely incredible, so generous, wanting to, as soon as I text them, I call them, I send an email, they're like, yes, we're in. If I'm not here, I'll send somebody, we'll do whatever you need. And we can put together a pretty extraordinary list of chefs, and really impressive list of chefs, and restaurateurs that we can sell a ticket for. And then our participants come in, by purchasing a ticket and donating directly to these organizations during the dinner, are able to do something. So instead of, you're sitting there, you feel like you can't do anything, this is one way to help.
How do these chefs come? Like, who calls them? You call them? How do you know them?
Now I just like text them. I mean, it used to be, Kevin and Tim, and I mean, if you've ever seen Kevin and Tim together, they are a lot of fun. They're hilarious. It's sometimes challenging managing them and being, I say like I am like the cat herder, like with these chefs, and like wrangling chefs is like herding cats, but like type A, very aggressive, rebellious cats. They show up, and we put together. It used to be Kevin and Tim reaching out to their network, and their network is extensive, and people really, like them. They're great guys. They're funny. They're fun. And if you've ever seen, like Bravo's Top Chef, when they do Restaurant Wars, and all the chefs are coming together to put together a dinner for one night, it really is like this for these events. And we try to be organized. We do all of the ticket sales, the promo, whatever it is, the programming, the run a show, everything that we can set up on our end. So the chefs just show up. And it is very organized, because I don't know if Tim and Kevin both came from sort of like science engineering backgrounds.
Tim actually has two. degrees or something like
I
that,
know,
right?
he's so Asian.
He said in his interview the first one was not his choice. So when he got the degree, he gave it to his parents.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, wow, you gave your degree to your... Yeah, because it was not what I wanted to do, but they wanted me to do math. And I did math. And then he did something that he actually really liked and he kept that for himself. And I was like, wow.
They're so talented outside of just culinary. But they, because of their organization and the way that they set up these events, it makes it really easy for chefs to just come in, participate. We make it fun where all the chefs are expoing and it's a fundraiser. We want to raise money. We want to encourage the diners to donate if they can additionally. And they've paid, sometimes a lot, hundreds of dollars a ticket to come to these events. And so I will get the chefs and I'm like, well, give them some plate. I'm like, okay, go bus and go drop. And you're going to talk about chefs who are normally in the back of the house. Yeah. Not all of them are like super comfortable going out front, but I just shove them out anyways. And then sometimes if we have a microphone, I give them the microphone. I'll tell them like, you're going to introduce your dish. But then once they get the mic, I was like, if you want to say something, you can say something. It's great because like food is comfort. Right? This is how chefs show love. This is how they comfort. And why not connect if you can? Sometimes it's weird being on the spot, right? And like you don't want that spotlight, but going to a table and being able to have at least some connection and really bonding over, the diners and the chefs need to do something about some tragedy.
What was your most memorable event that you guys organized?
You gotta come.
Have
to
you like
one
cried
event.
at one event?
No, I don't cry.
You're not crying?
I mean, I don't want to say that because no, but I'm not really a crier.
This Iron Lady is like, she's like, it's like,
mean,
with all these chefs together, I'm not gonna cry. I have no time to cry.
When you're doing an event, there's parts where in pre-shift, and we're talking to the chefs ahead of time, especially for the last event we did was for the LA wildfires, and we fundraise for specifically these 10 families that lived in a historical Black community in LA called Altadena. Most of the United States was redlined so that Black families could not buy and purchase homes. This one area of LA, they were Black families were able to purchase homes, and some of the victims here of Altadena had their homes for generations. It was there, and it was holding in their version of generational wealth. And these were very modest homes. You think about LA, you think about like the giant mansions, but these families had been living here for years. And you think about what happens in a lot of the Chinatowns, right? That in this country where there's development and all of a sudden there's these land grabs and corporations come in, and then all the people that were there where this communities were built like in Chinatowns and disappear, like you see right here in Washington DC. It's gone. I did not want that to happen to these like Black families in Altadena. I wanted them, if they wanted to stay and rebuild. And you've heard the horror stories about the insurance, about getting funding, about FEMA, and really how were they going to rebuild? And most of them were retired, with no real income coming in. How were they going to rebuild? So we reached out to Representative Judy Chu. She's a congressperson for California's 28th district. And we met her when we went to Capitol Hill. Tim, Kevin, and I, we got a congressional award from the Asian American Caucus, and we met her, and she actually represents Altadena and Monterey Park, which we had fundraised, I think the year before after the Monterey Park shootings. So reach out to her. Her office helped us connect to these families. And I said, we want to do micro impact. We're donating to these nonprofits, but I want to put money like directly into the pockets of these of 10 families, even if it's like not that much, like just something cash, because they've lost everything, like clothing. Think about computers, phones. Like this fire came on so quickly. So we started connecting with them over text, over email, and learning their stories. And they were sending me pictures of their house, what it looked like before, what it looked like now. And I think hearing like those stories, I shared with the chefs about, those stories. And like I did feel like I wasn't crying, but I felt emotional. I think
To be to be clear, I was not crying.
well, and it was in talking about this. I mean, it's the same thing. I feel very passionate about it, but I'm running the nonprofit. I mean, we still have work to do. Like I don't you can cry if I want to cry. I'm going to cry later. But this is
I
not
told you she's a badass.
mine. This is not my story to cry over. Like our mission is to help, and our mission is to grab some chefs, put together an event, sell tickets, and raise a shit ton of money.
Chef Stopping AAPI Hate is a 501
501c3.
So I am going to ask you next, pretty much a very spicy question because you've been involved with Pride, you've been involved with API community. I think you know where I'm going with it, with the current administration. But we're going to be talking about that in just a moment. Talking about spicy stuff. This is the segment of the show I like to call the Sambal Survey, where I travel around the world with 3 different sambals, which is like a spicy condiment. And one is made by me. The other 2 are made by different people. And I just want to know whether my sambal is actually really good. So there's 3 sambals there. Obviously, we are recording on a mahjong table, which is very new. We're going to be really careful because I don't think we're allowed to do this. Chef team is like,
Chef Tim is like, what are you doing on my brand new mahjong tables?
Okay, so just taste whichever and just tell us what you're tasting, and then after the 3, just pick one that you like. Is that spicy too?
No, but there's like I'm gonna try it with rice. It's nice. There's like a sourness to that. I like that. Okay, wait, is this the spiciest?
No, I don't think so. So, to give people some context as well, so she's 4th generation, but her roots are already not very spicy because, like, the Cantonese actually don't eat that much spice. I don't feel.
We're more like vinegar, yeah. It's stuff like oil, but it's just like, But I'm gonna do my best, right? I'm gonna. That is good. That is very tasty. It's like a little.
This one I think has anchovy.
Yes, that's what it is. It's like a fermented fish. It's like. I mean, that's like our palate, right? It's like our jam. And then this one.
Have you tasted belacan before? So belacan is literally fermented shrimp paste.
Was it like XO?
No, it's even stronger.
This one tastes like the most Americanized. I feel like it almost is like Western-y flavors. Sweet, a little bit. Like a little, like how chutney is a little sweet. Oh, wait, I have to pick like the one.
Yeah, that you feel that would be something that you like the most, the easiest to eat, or what is it?
I do like the first one because because with Cantonese food, it's like always with the vinegar, the red vinegar, and all of that, right?
That's true.
And I dump red vinegar. My son calls it's like Chinese ketchup because we dump it on like everything, right? I had to pick one.
Yeah.
Shoot. It's like picking like your favorite child, which I mean, honestly, Asians do very well. It's not a struggle for us. I like the fishiness of the middle one.
Okay.
But I can see very specifically what I want to eat with this one and this one.
Yeah.
But if I I mean, I don't know. I think it's tough to say when you're eating it on your own. If I was just to eat it on my own, I like this one because I think it has like the most flavor. But if I was using it as a condiment, I would like this on pan fried noodles,
I can see that.
right?
See that, yeah.
I want this on any, like if I was gonna have the steamed fish, I want this on.
Oh, I know.
You know what I
Just on top,
mean?
yeah.
And then with this, oh, if I was gonna have honestly like that, the salt and pepper like pork or something, I would want this with it.
But which one would relate to you the most? Just pick one. Just pick one.
The fishy one.
The fish.
The fishy one.
So to find out whether she picked my sambal or not, I will just tell you guys right now, I'm very shocked because I'm very proud of my flavors. And I always feel my flavors are very Southeast Asian. For the first time in my life, someone has told me that my flavors are Americanized. I'm like, what? I have to go back to the drawing board. But yeah, it's really like Malaysian sambals. It's supposed to do what you just said. Like it's good with anything. It's supposed to be a condiment. It's not a standalone by itself. But anyways, but yeah. So now let's go from the spiciness of those condiments to the spicy questions. In these times where DEI is a taboo, almost.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I mean, thinking about what DEI is, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. First of all, like what is wrong with that? Unless you felt like you were not included, right? So if you felt that DEI was going to include you, right, that you were under that umbrella, then why would you have a problem with it? But if your way of, from where you stand personally, if you have a problem with it, that means that I think intrinsically you don't feel like that includes you. And
But isn't that the origin of DEI? It was to help people feel more included, right? Because
more
everyone else was
included.
already included, right?
When you have a government and the government is supposed to be include all people, everybody that lives in this country is supposed to benefit and the government is supposed to serve them, then you have to make sure that the government is as diverse as the people that it serves, no more, no less. And in order to make sure that government serves everybody, it's important to have that diversity, the diversity of the population. And going away from that means that you're not serving those communities. So I think that there is a space also amongst like other communities of color, other diverse communities where you sometimes feel like, are you Asian or are you not Asian? If you're out, the more west you go, the closer to Europe that you go, do you consider like Turkey part of Asia? So I always say, if you are including yourself, like, your country, your ethnicity, as part of Asia, then we include you as well.
Yeah.
So we're coming from a place of inclusion and not exclusion with chefs. And I think, there's also space for allyship. And I think that's a really important space where people who, love our food and know about Asian culture, like first through our food, want to, build a love like with our people, because we always say like, you can't love our food and hate our people. Like that isn't, that doesn't make any sense. So it's our gateway into someone else's cultures when you try their food. And then it opens the door to learning about more about this person and where they come from. And I think really unpacking how you can't just say to somebody, you're Asian person, they're all the same, right? It's not a monolith. There's an intersectionality that comes with everybody and recognizing how that's different. I'm not going to treat somebody who is is from America, is Black, female, straight, born and raised in America. I'm not going to treat her the same as a lesbian, Haitian, first generation immigrant. You can't. Do they have the same story? Do they have the same culture, identity, all of that? So it's the intersectionality of all of the things that make us who we are, that we want to recognize, so we're not treating all Asians, all people, as we're separating them either, their sexual orientation, their gender, the same. You want to make sure that you understand how that makes people unique.
But more practically also with like the new administration, a lot of companies are pulling out the whole DEI thing. That means less funding is going to DEI, right? Which means organizations like yours, which means organizations out there. What would your advice be to someone who is running an organization that requires the help of this DEI programs, which is now not on the table anymore?
These grants were so dependable, right? It's like if you had federal funds, you could depend on them. You could build, you can forecast for years with these grants. And I think that safety net is now gone. But nonprofits are like anything else. Like you have to have diversified your funding. And there are many states, there's many local governments, there's cities, like here in DC, and there's states like, like you said, you live in Maryland. Maryland's one of the strongest, I think, states that fund still a lot of this DIA programming. There are some businesses that are not doing it, but look at Costco, which I love Costco. Costco has like stood down and said, you know what? No, we are not, we're going to keep our DI, our programming, and their shareholders agreed. And Costco's like blowing it up. They're doing so well because people are using their dollars to support companies that are standing on it. So, I'm not going to tell anybody how to run their business, but it's clearly popular still amongst like many Americans. And, whether the federal government is going to fund it or not, as we've seen, we as a country are more than just the federal government. It's us, right? It's us, it's our dollars, it's where we spend it. And those individual choices are ones that we make every day.
And this is nothing to do with anything, but because I think you were talking about it, and I don't know who's listening to this, right? It can be anyone. And when we talk about the F&B world, a lot of the service industry, when we talk about the environment that we are in America at the moment now, I think my first question to you, actually, which I should have asked earlier on, as an immigration lawyer, for someone who is an immigrant, if Mr. ICE comes to you, what's the first thing that someone should do? What's the practical step that you should do?
It's so funny to me how even most people in this country, Americans, have been here for generations, don't or aren't aware or educated or have learned about their rights, right? They don't know their constitutional rights. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that they don't know it, because I also say that they didn't know it because you didn't have to, right? If you knew everything, it's because you needed to know, because it was coming for you. Like somebody was coming for you. So you needed to know your rights. You wanted to know exactly what they are. And, I think in this country, we've been very blessed to have not, had that need. But now, these are different times, and people are scared. When you're coming into, say, ICE comes into a restaurant, and I do these trainings increasingly for the restaurant industry. And some people that are in the industry or the staff are like, oh, I don't need to attend. I'm a citizen. I'm okay. But this is not just, based on your immigration status. I think everybody needs to know what their rights are. And even if you are a citizen, but you are the hostess and law enforcement comes in and the restaurant isn't open yet, right? And so you're allowed to come into a public space, but what if the restaurant's closed? Are they allowed? Is that still considered a public space? And then if they ask you, does so-and-so work here? Does your hostess know what to say or not? Do you have a protocol in place as managers, and have you trained your staff to know, so your staff, your hostess, a person that's at the front knows what to do and what to say. If they come in and say, all right, I want to see everybody's employment records, let me see your files. are they allowed to do that? Do your managers know whether or not they should show that or not? And as a restaurant owner, as a business owner, understanding that if your managers do, then what kind of liability does that put upon you as a business and restaurant owner if your management wasn't trained and had given something that they should not have given, right? So these are all things I think that now, like all business owners, should be aware of, right? And so if it's a private area, an officer has to have a warrant. Do you know what the warrant looks like? Because there's an ICE warrant and a warrant from the Department of Homeland Security, and there's one that's signed by a judge. And so you a lot of times there is this ICE warrant that isn't actually a valid warrant. It has to be signed by a judge, and not an immigration judge, which is an administrative official, by an actual judge, right? So a judge from a court of law, right? Like a district court or a federal court. So if you don't have that, then it's not an actual warrant. And so what we do is we bring in, and I show them the different types. We kind of go through the rights with everybody. And this is a manager's training. This is a staff training. And I said, regardless of immigration status, I think everybody needs to know. Yeah.
Wow. We have gone down a rabbit hole, which I want to go deeper, but let's not sidetrack too much. I think there's some other conversations we can have around that, which we'll have on another episode. I will have you again. One.
I will do a Know Your Rights training for everybody.
That's really interesting. But let's go back to CSAH. What are the upcoming initiatives or collaborations that you're excited about? And obviously, how can anyone who's listening support CSAH?
Oh, I appreciate that so much. For us, it's a lot of our events that we do are around something that's happened, something in the zeitgeist, either a disaster, an event. We're fundraising for a cause. Right now, we're in May. May is AAPI Heritage Month. We are extremely busy. The chefs are all over the place. Not only just opening restaurants and running their own restaurants, but with a lot of the events that we do. And, I kind of go back and forth about, what our role is. Are we, it's, I think asking Asian Americans to educate others about who we are and what our culture is like, and take away like that otherness that, is the basis for a lot of this anti-Asian sentiment, is something that, do we have the responsibility? Is that like our job, or is it like someone else's job to actually educate themselves? Like I kind of like go back and forth. I was like, you know what? Because we are tired. We are doing the most, and now you're gonna tell me I have to educate you on this? Like you can go, if you want to learn, go get a book, read it, do something. But but they're reaching out to us. A lot of different organizations, a lot of companies, different groups are reaching out to us because they want to know. And then I think it is our responsibility, is as part of the nonprofit, to spread awareness and to take away the otherness. And we have,
I like that. To take away the otherness.
Right, because that's what it is, right? It is about like, you are different, like you're not like us. And, that's a basis for a lot of this. But we have several different events that we are doing for organizations. We also have, I'm really proud of this. There's a brewery here in DC called Lost Generation Brewery. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they are the only female AAPI-owned brewery in the country. And they're incredible. They're doing a beer release to benefit our nonprofit on May 16th at their brew house, which is gorgeous. It was like the old Nabisco factory here in DC. They have an incredible tap room that's kid and dog friendly. And all proceeds from the beer that's sold that evening, 100% of the proceeds will go to Chef Stopping AAPI Hate. We have something called a storefront emergency fund. It's really the only thing that we program for, where any small business, whether it's a restaurant or not, that was vandalized or a victim of any kind of AAPI Hate. If there was a employee that was attacked, we will basically just provide funds to replace. We've replaced windows, paid for medical, lost wages. And so one of the things that we do when we're raising funds is to support our storefront emergency fund. So we're really excited for that. I'm actually going to go there when they start canning and labeling the beer. And then 10% of the proceeds from the sales of that beer are going to go to Chef Stopping API Hate.
So before we go, I like to end on a light note. So two things for you. One is we have this thing called the Hungry Questions. So quick fire questions. I'll ask you the questions, whatever first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay, this could be bad. You're going to be a lot of bleeping.
What's the one dish that tastes like home to you?
Jok.
So,
皮蛋瘦肉粥.
oh, chopsticks, fork and spoon or hands?
Chopsticks.
One ingredient you can't live without.
Red wine vinegar.
Spicy, sweet, salty or sour?
Ooh, salty.
Most underrated Asian dish in your opinion?
Underrated dish.
I would say chop.
I would say jok too. Yeah, because like if you don't do it right, like, you know, it's bad.
Fusion food, love it or leave it?
Love it.
If you were a dish, what would that dish be?
I think it would be pan-fried noodles. Yeah.
With that, I want to thank you very much for spending time with us. I feel like we're just peeling the surface of an onion that I want to know more about. I would definitely love to have you back on the show next season to talk about other things. But thank you very much for spending time and for all the work that you do. I think throughout AAPI month, I've been meeting a lot of amazing people doing amazing things for the AAPI community. And I always say thank you because it's people like you who make me feel so much more proud to be Asian. So I cry all the time, by the way. Thank you very much for everything I do, and we wish Chef Stopping AAPI Hate all the best. So all the socials is Chef Stopping AAPI Hate, chefstoppingapihate.com, and that's where you get all the updates, right?
Yes.
All right. So with that, thank you very much, Pam Yee. And with as usual, I'll end by reminding everyone to keep their plates adventurous and their hearts open. My name is Abang Brian. Terima kasih and thank you for joining us on yet another episode of The Hungry Immigrant. Just by tuning in, you're already helping us to keep our stories, our flavors, and our heritage alive. But the reality is, our culture is fast disappearing. And when we lose it, we lose a part of who we are. So if this episode resonated with you, I have just one small favor to ask. Hit that subscribe button and share this show. Talk about it with your friends, your family, or anyone who loves food, culture, and the stories that bring us together. Let's keep these traditions alive, not just in history, but in our kitchens, our conversations, and our hearts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Hungry Immigrant and my personal account at Abang Brian for behind-the-scenes moments and extra bites from each episode. I'm Abang Brian, reminding you to always keep your plates adventurous and your hearts open.